So welcome back to the channel, and in today's video I will teach algebraic chess notation, which is the most common type of notation there is in chess. And most of you probably know what chess notation is, but if you don't, or you do but you need a recap, then you should watch this video. So let's get straight into it. Alright, so the first thing you need to know about chess notation is there are squares on the board and each of them has a name. So if you are white, the bottom left square right here is called A1, and then this square is A2, this square is A3, A4, A5, and so on until A8. And then we have B1, B2, B3, all the way to B8. And then this is C1, D1, E1, F1, G1. And finally, the bottom right corner is H1. So if I give you a random square right now, like this, can you tell me what square this is? Pause now to think about it. Alright, well, if you've had a chance to look at that, the answer is G5 because this is A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then this would be G1, and then we have G2, G3, G4, and G5, and this is the square I highlighted, so that would be G5. Okay, so that's what the squares are called, and now let's go to the pieces. So most of them, it's just the first letter of the piece. Like for rook, it's R. For bishop, it's B. For queen, it's Q. And for king, it's K. But since knight and king both start with K, for knight, it's actually N. K is king and N is knight. So when we move a piece somewhere, let's say like this, then we say the letter that corresponds to it. In this case, it would be N. And then we say that the square that it lands on. Not the square that it started from, but the square that it lands on. So if I play this move, then what do you think I would write? Alright, if you had a chance to look at that, the answer is NC3. And let's actually play this move. And you can see that right here it says NC3. The piece that you're moving, like the N or the B or the Q or whatever, is always capitalized. And then the square that's moving to, like C3, is non-capitalized. So you can see that right here, it says N is capitalized, and in C3, the C is not capitalized. So if I, let's say in a position like this, played this move, for example, then what would I call this? Alright, if you had a chance to look at that, the answer is B5, with the first B being capitalized and the second one not. And the reason is because the first B is the bishop, that's why it's capitalized, and then the second B is for the square, B1, B2, B3, B4, B5. So the second one is the B5, and we don't capitalize that. One other important thing to look at is that the pawns. The pawns, what you do is you just name the square that they go to. So if I played this, we just call this move E4, as you can see right here. We don't call it PE4, like pawn E4. I'm not really sure why, but that's just how it is for pawns. And now let's move on to special move like captures. Alright, so in this position, if white were to take this pawn, then we call it EX D5. And we would say E takes D5, but like when we write it, as you can see here, we say EX D5. And the reason why is because we don't want to say E4, but we still want to know like which side it came from. So if the pawn was here and it took, then it would be C takes D5. And the reason is because we don't have to say E4, because if a pawn is taking on D5, the only way that's possible is if it's this or this. So we only need to specify if it's E or C. We don't need to say if it's 4 or 5 or anything, because it has to be from the 4th rank if a pawn has to capture on the 5th rank, right? So this would be written as E takes D5, and takes, or X, is the capture symbol. So in this position, if black were to capture this pawn, then what will we write? Well, if you've had a chance to look at that, the correct answer is qx d5, and the q is capitalized because it's the queen moving, and then x is not capitalized. X is never capitalized for the capture, and then we have d5 because it's on the square, right? d1, d5. So that's captures. And now let's move on to some more special concepts like checks. Alright, so let's say in this position that I decided to go this. This is my move. I want to move my bishop over here. So you guys, having the knowledge that I just taught you, would probably say that this is written as b5, where the first b is capitalized and the second b is not, which would be correct, except there's a little detail here that the king is in check. So if the king is in check, then we put a little plus symbol at the end, as you can see like this. Bishop b5 or bb5, and then plus symbol, and the plus symbol indicates that it's check. And now black can block with the bishop, I guess, and this would be bd7, as we already know. Checkmate is another special symbol, so let me show you that real quick with the 4-move checkmate example. So we have e4, and then e5. Then let's play bishop to c4 or bc4, and we get knight c6. Now we have queen h5, knight f6, and then this is checkmate, but what do we call it? Pause now to try to solve it. Alright, if you had a chance to look at that, the correct move is queen takes f7, and the checkmate symbol is a hashtag. So it's q x f7, because it's the queen taking on f7, and then for checkmate we have this little hashtag symbol. So it only happens once per game, but you need to know how to write it. Another special case is a pawn promoting. So let me just have black do some bad moves so I can show you an example. Let's go e4, d5. E takes d5. Remember, it's ex d5. Then let's do c6. And then d takes c6. And then bishop e6. And let's have c takes b7. And I know the evil bar went up because we're getting a rook here. And then let's do knight to d7. And if I promoted the pawn like this, then we say the square that it landed on, b8, and then we put an equal sign, and then whatever the symbol we want. So usually people get queen. So if I get queen like this, then I would say b8 equal sign and then queen, because the symbol for queen is q. So b8 equals q, and then we can also take the rook like this, and if we do this, then we say b takes a8. Remember, there was the e takes d5 example, so it's bx a8, because we take with the b7 pawn and we take on a8, and then we put in equals queen at the end. And of course, if you don't want to promote to a queen, let's say you get a, I don't know, bishop, and you say bx a8 equals to bishop. And the last two things I want to cover today for the notation are the two rare moves in chess, which is castling and en passant. So let's say I play here. Let's have black do a random move. I go here with e5, and black plays d5. Then I can play the French move here, en passant. And basically, a notation for this is the exact same as it would have been if black had played d6 and I had taken. If this was the case, then what would the notation be? If you had a chance to look at that, it would just be ex d6, as we talked about earlier. And it's the same thing here, because you're taking with the e pawn, and you're taking on the d6 square. So even though the pawn on d5 disappears, the pawn that eventually lands on a square is still d6. So that's why. And the last thing is castling. And let's look at the notation for that. So let's go e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, bishop c5. And here, if I want to castle my king, the notation we write for king side castling is 0 hyphen 0 or O hyphen O, whatever you want to call it. And the notation we write for queenside castling would be, hold on, let me just make some moves here. Some developing moves. And here. And black can castle queenside now. And this notation would be 0 hyphen 0 hyphen 0. So if you castle queenside, then a good way to remember it is that if you castle queenside, then the rook goes from here to here, which is 3 squares. So you put 3 O's or 3 zeros. And if you castle kingside, then the rook goes from H1 to F1, so it's only 2 squares. So that's why you only put 2 O's or 2 zeros. Guys, that's pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video on how chess notation works. And if you have any questions, just let me know down below in the comments. And if you're wondering why chess notation is helpful, the reason is because chess notation is the language that chess players communicate in. So, like, if you were to move this pawn up 2 squares like this is e4 as we just learned. But if we didn't have chess notation, then you would have to say this as like, move the pawn that's above the king up 2 squares, which is really lengthy and hard to understand when you're writing a bunch of it. So like if you want to learn an opening, which is like e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, this is the Ruy Lopez opening. You can just say e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, instead of king's pawn up 2 squares, king's pawn up 2 squares, king's knight up 2 squares and to the left 1. Queen's knight to the, right 1 and down 2. Bishop to 4 squares to the left and 4 squares up. You know, you get the point. It's hard to say. It's hard to understand. When you say bishop b5, it's much easier to understand. Or bishop c4, or bishop b5, or whatever. So, thanks guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye! Like and subscribe.